Hello and welcome to this exploring session, and today we are completing our work on the Troublesome Reign of King John, attributed to George Peele. It feels quite George Peele to me. I don't have a problem with the attribution, but maybe there are others who do. I don't know. I haven't checked. And we are looking at the last few scenes of the play. There aren't many left. We're going from in our attribution, we're going from scene 5 of part 2 as we rattle on towards the end of the play. We don't have much play left to do today, so we have lots of room to discuss the play overall as well as the scenes that we are doing today. So introducing our wonderful readers who are going to be guiding us through the action. I would explain the plot so far, but frankly, why? We're nearly at the end. We're nearly at the end. So reading today, King John himself is...
Hello, Dan, in Montpellier, France.
And reading the part of the bastard today is...
Hi, I'm Valentina, and I'm an Italian actor and voiceover artist in London.
And reading Pembroke and second Friar today is...
Hi, I'm Elizabeth and I'm an author living in Northford.
And reading Salisbury and all of the messengers today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, and I'm still neither an actor nor an academic.
And reading Meloun and Louis today is...
Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director based in Germany.
Reading first Friar and Pandulph today is...
I'm Eric, and as you can see, I have video to prove that I'm here.
Indeed, yes, we have a face today, people. It's a beautiful thing. And reading today, the Abbot. The Abbot is...
Morning, where I am. My name is Lynn. I'm a teacher. I am coming to you from the northwestern United States.
And reading Monk Thomas and Henry today is...
Hi, I'm Francis Cox. I'm an actor coming to you from thundery, rainy Amsterdam.
And I am your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions and generally moving things in a forward motion, as it were. So we're going to be starting with scene 5. It's following on from some difficult and awkward business, as there's something of a bit of a French invasion going on, but not authorized by the Pope. The Pope did sort of set all of this legal dynastic problems in motion, but then he turns around and says, "No, actually, it's fine. I'm going to go with John. It's okay." And the person who he encouraged to invade is sort of going, "But you said you were on our side." And he said, "Well, we're not now. Oh, we're going to fight anyway." So they fight, and that's what's happening now. I would comment on how accurate this is historically, but I don't care. So we will go with what the play is saying happens, and here we have excursions, something which is very difficult, has been very difficult to do for the last few months under lockdown. But these are theatrical excursions. There may even be alarums as well, but we have no evidence for that. Enter Meloun with English lords Salisbury and Pembroke.
Oh, I am slain. Nobles, Salisbury, Pembroke, my soul is charged. Hear me for what I say. Concerns the peers of England and their state. Listen, brave lords, a fearful mourning tale to be delivered by a man of death. Behold these scars, the dole of bloody Mars, are harbingers from nature's common foe, citing this trunk to tell us prison house, life's charter, lordings lasteth not an hour, and fearful thoughts, forerunners of my end, bids me give physic to a sickly soul. Peers of England, know you what you do? There's but a hair that sunders you from harm. The hook is baited, and the train is made, and simply you run doting to your deaths. But lest I die and leave my tale untold, with silence, slaughtering so brave a crew, this I aver, if Lewis win the day, there's not an Englishman that lifts his hand against King John to plant the heir of France, but 'tis already damned to cruel death. I heard it, vowed, myself among the rest swore on the altar aid to this edict. 2 causes, lords, makes me display this drift. The greatest for the freedom of my soul that longs to leave this mansion free from guilt. The other, on a natural instinct, but that my grandsire was an Englishman. Misdoubt not, lords, the truth of my discourse. No frenzy, nor no brainsig idle fit, but well advised, and wotting what I say, pronounce I here, before the face of heaven, that nothing is discovered but a truth. It is time to fly. Submit yourselves to John. The smiles of France shade in the frowns of death. Lift up your swords, turn face against the French, expel the yoke that's framed for your necks. Back, woman, back, and bow not the clime, your seat, your nurse, your birthday's breathing place that bred you, bears you, brought you up in arms. Ah, be not so ingrate to dig your mother's grave. Preserve your lambs and beat away the wolf. My soul hath said, contrition's penitence lays hold on man's redemption for my sin. Farewell, my lords. Witness my faith when we are met in heaven, and for my kindness, give me grave room here. My soul doth fleet, world's vanities. Farewell.
And he dies.
Oh.
Now joy betide thy soul, well-meaning man. How now, my lords? What cooling card is this? A greater grief grows now than erst hath been. What counsel give you? Shall we stay and die, or shall we home and kneel unto the king?
My heart misgive this sad and cursed news. What have we done? Fie, lords, what frenzy moved our hearts to yield unto the pride of France? If we persevere, we are sure to die. If we desist, small hope again of life.
Bear hence the body of this wretched man that made us wretched with his dying tale, and stand not wailing on our present harms, as woman want, but seek our harms redress. As for myself, I will in haste be gone, and kneel for pardon to our sovereign, John.
Aye, there's the way, let's rather kneel to him, than to the French that would confound us all.
And they exit. No indication of whether they take the body or just perhaps it just lies there for a while. We're going to assume they probably take it off. So, dear Meloun, we knew him well. Well, I say we knew him. He's been about a lot, but has he said very much? People who've played Meloun in the past, any memories of anything particularly memorable said by him?
Well, the thing he said yesterday was like, once a traitor, always a traitor. So he definitely he's now helping the English for some reason. But he was the one that said, yes, Louis, we'll kill them all. We'll kill all the English that helped you once you are in power.
Wasn't he the one who actually came up with the plot, with the idea to kill them? Okay.
There's perhaps a hint of a well, not supernatural, but a sort of, he realizes his, this treachery is all wrong, and because that line about the Englishman that lifts his hand against King John, anyone who's doing that is dying all around. So maybe they've all been backing the wrong side, and maybe I love the half line break that we get. Farewell, my lords. Silence. Does everyone hope he's already dead?
Yeah.
And then he says something more.
Yeah. He did. Yeah.
He gets 2 deaths.
He did keep kind of coming back, didn't he? He kept kind of rallying.
It's the Frank Sinatra role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Positively last death scene. I think it's quite a good speech, but it's setting up for what's going to happen with Salisbury and Pembroke et al. And I sort of just went, yeah, oh, what have I done?
Yes. What were we thinking?
Seemed like a good idea at the time. Francis.
Yeah, I like that bit in Meloun's speech about how his grandsire was an Englishman. And I just suddenly thought, well, why didn't that occur to you in the first place when you thought up this stupid plot to kill all these Englishmen? Yeah.
Yes,
It was very
it comes
random.
very much out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sarah, were you saying?
No, I was saying it was very random, the fact that he just threw that in there. Oh, and my granddad was an Englishman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eric?
I was just going to say, it's kind of like Arthur's speech, which is broken up into two parts because he falls off the ramparts or whatever it is. But like that has more of a pause compared to this one. I don't know, maybe that's just a sort of reflection of like a theme going here. I don't know.
Yes,
Right.
Arthur got a stage direction between his dialogue. We just get an absence of dialogue, a pointed absence of dialogue, which you get in Peele as it's something he does sometimes. He just puts a random word at the beginning in isolation. You just linger on it. Other thoughts, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, two thoughts. One, does that make him a proto-Pinter? The other one is, I assume that there must be retainers with the English lords, because otherwise Salisbury's line, bear hence the body of this wretched man, wouldn't make as much sense. I think that's got to be done by lesser characters, unnamed characters.
Yes, I think that makes sense. There's some supernumeraries to take him.
Salisbury and Pembroke wouldn't dirty their hands doing manual labour, would they?
No, they've got all this contrition to prepare. So,
yeah, all that humble pie to eat.
Yeah. Going to buy some knee pads because they're going to need them. Other thoughts? No, it's a short little scene. It's almost in lieu of the battle scene itself. You just have a death scene. There are excursions and things, but there's no indication that there is a battle scene enacted. And so, yes, this is sort of in lieu of that, if that makes sense. We get a casualty representative of the war. Any additional thoughts before we go on to scene 6? I see no hands, so let's go to scene 6. Enter King John. He's carried between two lords, probably in a chair.
Sit down the load not worth your pain, for done I am with deadly wounding grief. Sickly and succorless, hopeless of any good, the world hath wearied me, and I have wearied it. In loathes I live and loathe myself. Who pities me? To whom have I been kind? But to a few. Few will pity me. Why die I not? Death scorns so vile the prey. Why live I not? Life hates so sad a prize. I sue to both, to be retained of either, but both are death. I can be heard of neither. Nor death, nor life, yet life and near the near, ye mixed with death, biding I wot nowhere, not where.
And enter Philip, the bastard.
How fares my lord that he is carried thus? Not all the awkward fortunes yet befallen made such impression of lament in me, nor ever did my eye attain my heart with any object moving more remorse than now beholding of a mighty king borne by his lords in such distressed state.
What news with thee? If bad, report it straight. If good, be mute. It doth but flatter me.
Such as it is, and heavy though it be, to glut the world with tragic elegies, once will I breathe, to aggravate the rest, another moan, to make the measure full. The bravest bowman had not yet sent forth 2 arrows from the quiver at his side, but that a rumour went throughout our camp, that John was fled, the king had left the field. Alas, the rumours called these years of mine, who rather chose as sacrifice to Mars than ignominious scandal by retire. I cheered the troops, as did the Prince of Troy, his wary followers 'gainst the Myrmidons, crying out loud, St. George, the day is ours, but fear had captivated courage quite, and like the lamb before the greedy wolf, so heartless fled our warmen from the field. Short tale to make, myself among the rest was fain to fly before the eager foe. By this time night had shadowed all the hearth, and sable curtains of the blackest hue, and fenced us from the fury of the French, as lo, from the jealous Juno's eye, when in the morning our troops did gather head, passing the washes with our carriages, the impartial tide, deadly and inexorable, came raging in, with billows threatening death, and swallowed up the most of all our men. Myself upon a galloway right free, well paced, outstripped the floods that followed, wave by wave, I so escaped to tell this tragic tale.
Grief upon grief, yet none so great a grief to end this life and thereby rid me of grief. Where was ever any so unfortunate, the right idea of a cursed man as I, poor I, a triumph for despite? My fever grows. What ague shakes me so? How far to Strinstead? Tell me, do you know? Present unto the abbot word of my repair. My sickness rages to tyrannize upon me. I cannot live unless this fever leave me.
Good cheer, my lord, the abbey is at hand. Behold, my lord, the churchmen come to meet you.
Before we go on to the churchmen coming to meet you, I'm just sort of struck by here. We have a very long death scene. And then we have this almost sort of mirroring with John coming on being really unwell and being very miserable, and the bastard turning up with news. So, yeah, any thoughts in this before we have the arrival of abbots and things? Sarah?
I don't have a thought, but I do have a question, because I missed the last scene of yesterday. Has he been poisoned by somebody?
No.
No.
Okay. He's just poorly.
He's just feeling a bit unwell. Okay, right. Thank you.
Alan?
Well, from the context, he's just lost his baggage train in the wash.
Mm. Yes, it's not really fully articulated, is it?
So he may be suffering from hypothermia and also a severe lack of resources.
Mm. Just feeling a bit miserable. Francis?
Yeah, he seems very self-pitying in that opening speech, which I found quite irritating, actually. I'm getting quite annoyed with King John as a character by this point.
Well, it's interesting as a journey that we've had since last time and the time before about who King John is, because last time he was sort of, he was a very different character, I think, or he was on the journey to here.
Yeah.
Last time and things. Valentina, do you have any thoughts? You keep moving like you have thoughts.
Well, I mean, my head works, so my brain works, and sometimes I do think. No, I just find it funny that like we get to see like the death of one man, and then on the other side, like so many men have died, and it's just kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, this happened, but you're unwell, so it's like, it's a bit, yeah.
Skewed priorities.
Yeah, Dan, how are you finding the king? Were you finding him annoying to be?
No, not really. I don't judge my characters. So it's not what he's feeling right now. So that's it. Forget everything that happened in the past. He's taking pity on himself now. So there you go. If he wants to repent now, hey.
No judgments from Dan. Any additional thoughts? Let's before we finish the scene. Eric.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, all the questions he's got, somehow he's like, well, whereas he's the guy, he's the monarch, he's supposed to be the one who knows what's going on generally. But, like, or at least his advisors are. But he kind of, like, this whole thing has shaken him to the core, to the point that he's just doubting everything he knows. And, like, even, like, why should I live? What's the point? Like, or why should I die? Kind of, what's the point of being in this in-between place?
Yeah, I think there's a good point. John's just not had a good play at all. There's just never been an outright success on his side. It's all been just constantly jockeying to establish a status quo. It feels justified. Feels like a journey. That's why I like a journey.
I think he's doing the best he can.
He's just not his brother. He's just not his brother, is he? Okay. Anything else? No, let's finish the scene then. We have the entrance of the abbot, and certain monks are going to come in now. Yes, certain monks, including Thomas, and nobody else. Yes, I think that speaks.
All health and happiness to our sovereign lord, the king.
Nor health, nor happiness hath John at all. Say, Abbot, am I welcome to thy house?
Such welcome as our abbey can afford, your majesty shall be assured of.
The king thou seest is weak and very faint. What victuals hast thou to refresh his grace?
Good store, my lord, of that you need not fear, for Lincolnshire and these our abbey grounds were never fatter nor in better plight.
Philip, thou never needest to doubt of Kate's. Nor king nor lord is seated half so well as are the abbeys throughout all the land. If any plot of ground you pass another, the friars fasten on it straight. But let us in to taste of their repast. It goes against my heart to feed with them, or be beholden to such abbey grooms.
And exit them, leaving the monk Thomas behind.
Is this the king that never loved a friar? Is this the man that doth contemn the Pope? Is this the man that robbed the Holy Church, and yet will fly unto a friary? Is this the king that aims at abbeys' lands? Is this the king whom all the world abhors, and yet will fly unto a friary? Accursed by Swinstead Abbey, abbot, friars, monks, nuns, and clerks, and all that dwells therein. If wicked John escape alive away, now if that thou wilt look to merit heaven, and be canonized for a holy saint, to please the world with a deserving work, be thou the man to set thy country free, and murder him that seeks to murder thee.
And here we have the re-entrance of the abbot.
Why are you not within to cheer the king? He now begins to mend and will to meet.
What if I say to strangle him in his sleep?
What, at thy mumpstus? Away, and seek some means for to pastime the king.
I'll set a dungeon dagger at his heart, and with a mallet knock him on the head.
Alas, what means this monk? To murder me? There lay my life, he'll kill me from my place.
I'll poison him, and it shall ne'er be known, and then shall I be chiefest of my house.
If I were dead, indeed he is the next, but I'll away, for why, the monk is mad, and in his madness he will murder me.
My lord, I cry your lordship mercy, I saw you not.
Alas, good Thomas, do not murder me, and thou shalt have my place with 1,000 marks.
I murder you? God shield me from such a thought.
If thou wilt needs, yet let me say my prayers.
I will not hurt your lordship, good my lord, but if you please, I will impart a thing that shall be beneficial to us all.
Wilt thou not hurt me, holy monk? Say on.
You know, my lord, the king is in our house.
True.
You know likewise, the king abhors a friar.
True.
And he that loves not a friar is our enemy.
Thou sayest true.
Then the king is our enemy.
True.
Why then should we not kill our enemy? And the king being our enemy, why then should we not kill the king?
O blessed monk, I see God moves thy mind to free this land from tyrant slavery. But who dares venture to do this deed?
Who dare? Why, I, my lord, dare to do the deed. I'll free my country and the church from foes, and merit heaven by killing of a king.
Thomas, kneel down, and if thou art resolved, I will absolve thee here from all thy sins. For why, the deed is meritorious. Forward, and fear not. Man, for every month our friar shall sing a mass for Thomas' soul.
God and St. Francis prosper my attempt. For now, my lord, I go about my work.
And they exit. An interesting version of 20 questions there. it's a nice piece of logic there. Go trap them with simple yes/no questions. Is it true or false? Is it then I'm going to lead you down this little path until you get to the point where you agree with me. I personally think if King John gets murdered here, it's his own fault. He shouldn't have said how much he wasn't keen on what he was going to eat there. I think he's setting up his own murder, really, isn't he? I know that's victim blaming, but I'm just feeling that about John today. Sarah, you were quite keen on Monk Thomas there.
Is this the king that never loved a friar? I love that speech. That is fantastic. And then the fact that it then pivots into a really comic little moment is just brilliant. That's genius.
Yes, this is one of those asides that someone gets trapped in. He's still talking to the audience, still thinking. The other person comes in, just going, hi. No, oh, never mind. What?
Yeah.
It's
great.
Yeah, I like the fact that we have a little more motivation for the poisoner than we have in other versions, because otherwise it seems a little random. He was poisoned by a monk, and that fact was kind of notorious. That people familiar with the reign of King John knew how he ended. So for a lot of people in the original audience, the fact that he was going to be poisoned would be no surprise. But to motivate it a little, I like that. I think that the story kind of calls for that, and it's even maybe a little sort of doubly motivated because the conversation, the non-conversation, the asides, implies that there's something sort of dangerous about Thomas. If the abbot thinks, oh, he's the kind of guy that would kill me in order to become head of the organization. Oh no, he wants to kill the king. Okay, we're going to aim his violent tendencies that way. Yay.
It wouldn't be the first time a religious organization decided to try and push their fanatics in an outward direction rather than an inward. It has other precedents. Francis, you I think we're going to jump in.
Yeah, well, two things. I love that that sort of line where he says, and with a mallet, knock him on the head. I just found that quite comic. After saying, he'll plunge a dagger into his heart, and then I'll knock him on the head with the mallet for good measure. I found that quite funny. But Monk Thomas, for me, has a kind of modern resonance about these white supremacist young men in America at the moment who go off and kill people, or of their own volition. These lone wolves.
Yes, there isn't like in the other King John Bale's version where there's a whole sort of institutional approach. I think, as I recall, there's a lengthy discussion by the vices of, yes, we'll get him to, and there'll be a murder, and we'll do that. Whereas here, it springs spontaneously from this one individual who then co-opts and is lauded by the establishment of that institution, but rather than being just quietly led to a cell and having the door locked on him, which would perhaps be a more responsible action for the abbot to be doing there. Other thoughts? Valentina?
I've got a question, which is probably what was bothering me before. It's like everybody thinks King John has fled, but he seems to be actually quite unwell. It's like no one thought of saying that to anybody, because not even the bastard knows that he's being carried somewhere else. It's just I don't know. It's just a bit peculiar. Like I don't mind it, but it seems to be a bit on John's side in terms of like.
He didn't flee the battle because he was afraid. He fled because he was
sick. Yeah.
But I think perhaps in the values of the time, you're supposed to sort of power through your illness and your weakness and just keep fighting. So it is still a sign of weakness that he's succumbing to his
whatever he has,
exhaustion rather than powering through it.
Richard would have powered through, wouldn't he? He would have kept going. Eric.
I was just going to say, it's kind of strange that, like, in the previous scene, I can't remember. I've lost track of they all blur together. It's interesting how the bastard doesn't have a problem with him going to the abbey for help. He just kind of goes, look, there's an abbey here, maybe they'll help. Whereas, like, in all the previous scenes, he's been like, I hate the church. I hate, the sort of these abbots who steal who sort of gather money for themselves, eat everything, the fat friars and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like, what caused that pivot? Is that just because he's supporting the king, or yeah?
Well, there's probably a thing to do with nature of hospitality. So, it's a bit of a taboo to do nasty things to people you've invited into your household, and also it is a church. I mean, it's really not the kind of thing they're supposed to do, however unpleasant they are. Francis.
Yeah, I think it's just I think the bastard is just being expedient. King John is sick. He needs to rest. He needs to eat. There's there's an abbey. This is the king. Let's go and avail ourselves of their fare.
And if they are venal and corrupt, they'll have lots of good grub. That's the one advantage of victualling at a corrupt institution. The food and the booze will be great. Alan.
The thing is that historically at the time, the only centres of medical excellence would have been the abbeys.
Yes, that's a good point. Lynn.
Yeah. So this is actually kind of interesting now that Eric has brought our attention to this. Like, why would he trust himself in this situation when he's been so hostile to the church? What makes him feel safe here? Again, we see John sort of overplaying his hand, overestimating his own authority, overestimating his ability to get away with shit. So it's really kind of consistent with his perception of himself and his position throughout the story.
Excellent. Anything else before we move on to scene 7? Not a long scene, as I recall, but a little bit more evidence and data. So, enter Louis and his army.
Thus, victory, in bloody laurel clad, follows the fortunes of young Ludowick. The Englishmen, as daunted at our sight, fall as the fowl before the eagle's eyes. Only 2 crosses of contrary change do nip my heart and vex me with unrest. Lord Meloun's death, the one part of my soul. A braver man did never live in France. The other grief, aye, that's a gall indeed. To think that Dover Castle should hold out against all assaults and rest impregnable. Ye warlike race of Francus, Hector's son, triumph in conquest of that tyrant John. The better half of England is our own, and towards the conquest of the other part we have the face of all the English lords. What then remains but overrun the land? Be resolute, my warlike followers, and if good fortune serve as she begins, the poorest peasant of the realm of France shall be a master or an English lord.
And here enters a messenger.
Hello, what news?
Pleaseth your grace, the Earl of Salisbury, Pembroke, Essex, Clare and Arundel, with all the barons that did fight for thee, are, on a sudden, fled with all their powers, to join with John, to drive thee back again.
And exit messenger, but then enter another messenger who is a completely different person.
Lewis, my lord, why standst thou in amaze? Gather thy troops, hope not of help from France, for all thy forces, being 50 sail, containing 20,000 soldiers, with victuals and munition for the war, putting from Calais in unlucky time, did cross the seas, and on the Goodwin Sands, the men, munition, and the ships are lost.
Exit this second messenger, and then almost immediately a third messenger enters, who is another completely different person.
More news. Say on.
King John, my lord, with all his scattered troops, flying the fury of your conquering sword, as Pharaoh erst within the bloody sea, so he and his, environed with the tide, on Lincoln washes, all were overwhelmed. The barons fled, our forces cast away.
Was ever heard such unexpected news?
Yet, Lodovick, revive thy dying heart. King John and all his forces are consumed. The less thou needst the aid of the English earls, the less thou needst to grieve thy navy's wrack and follow time's advantage with success.
Brave Frenchmen, armed with magnanimity, march after Lois, who will lead you on to chase the baron's power that wants ahead. For John is drowned, and I am England's king. Though our munition and our men be lost, Philip of France will send us fresh supplies.
And he exits. Nobody's having a good time. It's like there's no clear winner anywhere at any point in any of these scenes. This is a play of failure. Constant, unremitting failure. Who wants to leap in? Sarah.
Well, you can imagine that Pandulph and the Pope are sitting back and having quite a good giggle.
Banking the checks for the arms sales.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right.
Lynn.
Yes, nobody. All the in-betweenness and ambiguity in this whole story. There is a battle at the beginning, which I'm assuming you were referring to, where both the French and the English are claiming, we won. No, we won. Can't you see? It's obvious we killed more of your people than you killed of ours, or whatever. And again, all these natural phenomena are against the English, and then the misfortune is the French. And then, and there's poor King John somewhere between life and death, and neither one wants to claim him. This is like the least black and white situation you could imagine on every level.
It's just interesting, with most history plays that we've done, there is a sense of a winner and a loser. There's some sort of momentum towards a winner and a loser. And so, if it's a valiant king who we can follow, then they're a winner. And if they're an evil king, they head downwards towards death and despair. But nobody ever wins. And it's fascinating to construct a play around just this bunch of failures. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, talking about everyone losing, the mention of 20,000 troops having died. Yeah, so they're only peasants.
Yeah, we don't really get or we've had a few semi sort of battle scenes very early on, but we sort of have these representative person coming on and then someone mentioning, in passing, lots of people died. But yeah, it's not imposing itself in a way. Any thoughts, Valentina? You again? I saw movement of hands. I don't know if you're waving or just being enthusiastic.
No, I think it's just I was just thinking that you'd need a massive Risk tabletop to show what the hell is going on. So with a lot of little soldiers here and there, but it's really no one is in control of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a game of Risk, it's someone who's desperately trying to hold all of Asia at once, which is always a disaster. It never works. It's just too big, and the territory is just unholdable. It seems to be that Sisyphean task that the King John has of trying to get anything good. And messenger after messenger after messenger after messenger. 3 messengers in one scene. I mean, that. Whew.
Yeah. Great. That's just, and especially if you pace that correctly, where the messengers pretty much pass each other on the way in and out. Yeah.
Ideally coming from slightly different directions, and really confusing where Louis is. Always slightly confusing when people use a different name for themselves. So, Lodowick for Louis, he's just talking about himself. And so just to throw you a different name, just to be annoying. I'd probably change that in production, frankly.
There's got to be some way you can make that line scan with a 2-syllable name rather than a 3-syllable name. That's just lazy, George.
Yeah. King Louis, Lodowick? No, it doesn't quite scan in the right way. But anyway, any other thoughts before we go into Scene 8? You said that with great gravitas. I'm not suggesting anything important happens in Scene 8. Okay, so enter 2 friars laying a cloth.
Dispatch. The king desires to eat. Would a might eat his last for the glove he bears the churchman?
I am of thy mind too, and so it should be, and we might be our own carvers. I marvel why they dine here in the orchard.
I know not, nor I care not. The king comes.
And having stated they're in an orchard, enter King John, the Abbot, Philip the Bastard, Monk Thomas, with a cup of wine.
On, Lord Abbot, shall we sit together?
Pleases your grace, sit down.
Take your places, sirs. No pomp and penury. All beggars and friends may come. Where necessity keeps the house, courtesy has barred the table. Sit down, Philip.
My lord, I am loath to allude so much to the proverb, honours change manners. A king is a king, though fortune do her worse, and we as dutiful in despite of a frown as if your highness were now in the highest type of dignity.
Come, no more ado. And you tell me much of dignity, you'll mar my appetite in a surfeit of sorrow. What cheer, Lord Abbot? Methinks you frown like an host that knows his guest hath no money to pay the reckoning.
No, my liege, if I frown at all, it is for fear this cheer too homely to entertain so mighty a guest as your majesty.
I think rather, my lord Abbot, you remember my last being here, when I went in progress for pouches, and the rancour of his heart breaks out in his countenance to show he hath not forgot me.
Not so, my lord, and the meanest follower of his majesty are heartily welcome to me.
And Thomas offering King John a cup of wine.
Marcel, my liege, and, as a poor monk may say, welcome to Swinstead.
Begin, monk, and report hereafter thou wast taster to a king.
As much health to your highness as to my own heart.
And he drinks himself and hands the cup to King John.
I pledge thee kind, monk.
The merriest draught that ever was drunk in England. Am I not too bold with your highness?
Not a whit, all friends and fellows for a time.
If the inwards of a toad be a compound of any proof, why, so it works.
And Monk Thomas falls down dead.
Say, Philip, where's the monk?
He is dead, my lord.
Then drink not Philip for a world of wealth.
What cheer, my liege? Your colour begins to change.
So doth my life. Oh, Philip, I am poisoned. The monk, the devil, the poison begins to rage. It will depose myself, the king from reign.
This abbot hath an interest in this act. At all adventures take thou that from me.
And the bastard kills the abbot.
There lie the abbot, a belubber devil, march with the monk unto the gates of hell. How fares, my lord?
Philip, some drink. Frozen Alps, to tumble on and cool this inward heat that rageth as the furnace sevenfold hot, to burn the holy tree in Babylon. Power after power forsake their proper power. Only the heart impugns with faint resist the fierce invade of him that conquers kings. Oh, God, oh pain. Die, John, O plague inflicted on thee for thy grievous sins. Philip, a chair, and by a grave. My legs disdain the carriage of a king.
Oh, my good my liege, with patience conquer grief, and bear this pain with kingly fortitude.
Methinks I see a catalogue of sin wrote by a friend in marble characters, the least enough to lose my part in heaven. Methinks the devil whisper in my ears and tells me 'tis in vain to hope for grace. God, I must be damned for Arthur's sudden death. I see 1,000 men come to accuse me for my wrong on earth, and there is none so merciful a God that will forgive the number of my sins. How have I lived but by another's loss? What have I loved but wrack of others' weal? When have I vowed and not infringed mine oath? Where have I done a deed deserving well? How, what, when, and where have I bestowed a day that tended not to some notorious ill? My life replete with rage and tyranny craves little pity for so strange a death. Or who will say that John deceased too soon? Who will not say he rather lived too long? Dishonor did attake me in my life, and shame attendeth John unto his death. Why did I escape the fury of the French, and did not by the temper of their swords? Shameless my life, and shamefully it ends, scorned by my foes, disdained of my friends.
Forgive the world and all your earthly foes, and call on Christ, who is your latest friend.
My tongue doth falter. Philip, I tell thee, man, since John did yield unto the priest of Rome, nor he nor his have prospered on the earth. Cursed are his blessings, and his curse is bliss. In the spirit, I cry unto my God, as did the kingly prophet David cry, whose hands as mine with murder were attaint. I am not he shall build the Lord a house, or root these locusts from the face of earth. But if my dying heart deceive me not, from out these loins shall spring a kingly branch, whose arms shall reach unto the gates of Rome, and with his feet tread down the strumpet's pride that sits upon the chair of Babylon. Oh, Philip, my heartstrings break. The poison's flame hath overcome in me weak nature's power, and in the faith of Jesu, John doth die.
See how he strives for life, unhappy lord, whose bowels are divided in themselves. This is the fruit of popery, when the true kings are slain and shouldered out by monks and friars.
And here enter a completely different, or possibly one of the earlier messengers.
Please it your grace, the barons of the land, which all this while bear arms against the king, conducted by the legate of the Pope, together with the prince, his highness' son, do crave to be admitted to the presence of the king.
Your son, my lord, young Henry, craves to see your majesty, and brings with him, besides, the barons that revolted from your grace. Oh, piercing sight, he fumbleth in the mouth, his speech doth fail. Lift up yourself, my lord, and see the prince to comfort you in death.
Enter Pandulph, young Henry, the barons with daggers in their hands.
Oh, let me see my father ere he die. Oh, uncle, were you here and suffered him to be thus poisoned by a damned monk? Ah, he is dead, father. Sweet father, speak.
His speech doth fail, he hasteth to his death.
And the lords kneel.
Lords, give me leave to joy the dying king with the sight of these, his nobles kneeling here with daggers in their hands, who offer up their lives for ransom of their foul offence. Then, good my lord, if you forgive them all, lift up your hand in token you forgive.
And King John possibly lifts up his hand.
We humbly thank your royal majesty, and vow to fight for England and her king, and in the sight of John, our sovereign lord, in spite of Louis and the power of France, who hitherward are marching in all haste, we crown young Henry in his father's stead.
Help, help, he dies. Our father, look on me.
King John, farewell in token of thy faith. Lift up thy hand, that we may witness here thou diest the servant of our Saviour Christ.
And King John dies.
Now joy betide thy soul. What noise is this?
Enter another completely different messenger.
Help, lords, the Dauphin makes hitherward. with ensigns of defiance in the wind, and all our army standeth at a gaze, expecting what their leaders will command.
Let's arm ourselves in young King Zary's right, and beat the power of France to sea again.
Philip, not so, but I will to the prince and bring him face to parley with you.
Lord Salisbury, yourself shall march with me, so shall we bring these troubles to an end.
Sweet uncle, if I love thy sovereign, let not a stone of Swinstead Abbey stand, but pull the house about the friars' ears, for they have killed my father and my king.
And they all exit. So quite a lot happening there. The bastard. I wouldn't say he is a bastard in this scene, but there are a couple of moments where he just sort of goes, "Come on, you man up. You've only been poisoned. Bear this pain with kingly fortitude."
Shit happens.
Like Richard would.
Yeah, just like. And then, of course, he's the feed line for John, forgive the world and, call on Christ. And it sort of gives King John his in to be defiantly anti-Catholic. You can, potentially the audiences at the time would have been very pleased by this moment. And there are lots of questions about latter things in the scene as well. Francis?
Yeah, I love the way Monk Thomas takes one swig of this poisoned wine, drops dead immediately, and King John has a drink and just sticks around for this long speech, and plus the conflab with the bastard. That's just
well, it's basically, this is stage convention poisoning, whereby it depends on billing. Basically, where are you billing in the cast order? You get to live longer. And it's not. Sorry, say Dan.
I was just saying he's also got a better diet than him, so I'm sure as he's king.
Yeah. But he's ill. He's been going on for scene after scene about how ill he is.
Well, maybe some of the remedies he's been taking acts as an antidote to the poison he's been given. So he's given a little extra time to make, and plus he's a king. He has got some manly fortitude. I think in that sense, kingly grace is there. It's not the first suicide poisoning that we've had as well in the Queen's Men, as I recall. I think there was one in Salamis, where the poisoner just actually went to the audience and went, "Well, he's going to murder me after I kill him anyway." So so whereas this is more fanaticism, isn't it? It's he's presumably
it's the jihadist.
Yeah, he's a suicide bomber.
Yeah. It's really quite disturbing, actually, when you start allying this with sort of more modern resonances. That there's something quite disturbing about Monk Thomas. Lynn, I think you were wanting to say something.
Yeah. I was just saying, if we're going to try to sort of justify the order of the deaths, maybe Thomas takes a really big swig of wine just to get it over, because he knows that he's going to kill anyway. So we're not going to sip it, because that'll just prolong the agony. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Dosage. King John, we don't know. He's not been well, so maybe he can't manage very much. Just a sip.
I don't know.
I'd argue it depends on the poison, but maybe that's just me. Because, like, in some, as far as I know, in some places they used to use like crushed glass. In other places they would use like actual herbs and stuff. So I guess it depends on the poison.
I think he explicitly says toad.
Yeah, he does.
So it's a potion which has later resonances.
Yeah, good point.
Well, all sorts of poisons are available from the animal kingdom. So it's fun. The bastard is very quick on his feet there. Takes out the abbot. There's lots of lubbers. I like, the abbey lubber. It's a general term of abuse that works well, and has been used in other variations. Is it Pope lubber or something we had earlier, or something along those lines? But the bastard, to say, a feed line into King John's final iterations. I like King John's death speeches. They're quite good. I quite like the fact that he doesn't end on a speech. He gets more and more he ends up he can't speak. He's fumbling in in the mouth, and then all he can do is vaguely gesture. And we can infer that he does lift his hand for the forgiveness of the lords. But here's the question: when Pandulph, the Catholic legate, gives him last rites, as it were, does he accept them? Because on one hand, he doesn't want to be damned. On the other hand, he's been very, and as a character has been set up to be anti-Catholic. So would he accept? And the script gives us no indications.
No. Perhaps that's the director's choice.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting element to this scene, that rather than death aria and now I die thunk, it's a really interesting alternative journey there. And he's not giving in gracefully either, is he? He is ranting in his final speech, or he seemed to me. How did that feel for you, Dan?
It read like a rant to me as well, that this was not your typical death aria speech. So I went with it that way.
Yeah, Meloun got it earlier. Francis?
This question of whether or not he accepts the last rites, it suddenly reminded me of Lord Marchmain in Brideshead Revisited. Throughout that book or TV show, he's turned his back on the Catholic Church, but at the moment of death, he accepts the last rites because that's how deep-rooted the Catholic faith is.
Though I don't think Olivier ever played King John. Sorry. Lynn.
So his ranting, in some ways, his last long chunk of text is a little ranty, incoherent. But I think it's also working really hard to rehabilitate John and his reputation, where he recognizes that he was a bad king. He recognizes that giving into the papacy was wrong and perhaps the root of all his misfortune, and that he knows he's going to be the progenitor, however many generations along, of someone who will in fact turn the church in the correct direction. So I think the text is working really hard to redeem John from everything he's done for the past 2.5 hours, so that we can see him as a kind of proto-Protestant hero, because that's the agenda that or part of the agenda that the play has.
Francis?
Yeah, one thing in that scene that kind of knocked me for six was the sudden appearance of Henry, the heir.
Yes.
It was just like, where did he come from? He's not been mentioned before. We've had so many claimants to the throne, or to various thrones in this play. It kind of comes out of nowhere.
Nobody's mentioned. Yeah, it's part of the time telescoping thing that's been going on. That presumably quite a lot has happened since the death of Arthur. I don't think, have we had a mention of precise. Yeah, you're right. He just turns up. How old is he supposed to be? Is he doubling with Arthur? In a sort of ironic twist. Is he supposed to be quite young, or is he an older man? I can't remember historically. I'm just wondering what the play is pushing for. Sarah?
Yeah, he comes out of nowhere. And then, because also, Arthur's claim to the throne would not have been so dangerous if John had a son. So, I don't know. Maybe time's been telescoped here, I guess. Yeah. But also, how the hell does he know where to go? Because John and the bastard are on the road. John's feeling a bit mimsy, and the bastard's like, "Oh, look, there's an abbey over there. They'll look after you. Let's go over there." How does everybody get there in time, and how do they know that they need to? Because he's only just been poisoned.
I'm assuming that they're part of the train that, you know, King John it's not just him and the bastard wandering through, you know, that, you know, there is a wider train following along.
Then would they have all left the battle?
Well, I think the royal family would stick together.
And all the barons?
Well, the barons have been playing catch up. They've been on their way.
Yeah. It is a little weird though that if Henry is in presence somewhere that he hasn't dined with his father. It's a little weird.
I don't know if in stage terms it really is, or whether we're just overthinking this. You know, it's if he's quite a young prince, then, you know, the nice thing about this is it creates a nice, quite sweet, sad component to this scene, and, you know, sentimental and manipulative though it might be, I suspect it works. But I don't know how old he's supposed to be. Alan, I saw a hand earlier.
You made the point that I was going to about the travelling court.
Francis?
Yeah, I think he is quite young, because he had that line after he died. Help! No, he's, you know, he's dead, and then the Lords are saying, oh, okay, we're going to crown Henry, but then Henry's saying, help, help, you know, help my father, you know. That feels like a young man who doesn't realise he's dead. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, it's
and I don't really want him to be dead. I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Yes,
I'm not ready. I've literally only been on stage for about 57 seconds.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've even have a mention of a mother. King John has not been notable for his wife at any particular point. Dan, are you speaking there? You're muted. No, you're saying other things. Alan?
Yeah, it's noticeable the second half of this play seems to have a massive absence of females as compared with the first half.
Yeah, it's something we've had with quite a few Queen's Men plays. I don't know the overall percentage, but, you know, it's like King Lear. You know, those great the older sister parts just disappear in the second half. They whittle down to almost nothing. I don't know if it's a structural thing to do with doubling, that they just don't physically have room for those characters anymore, or whether just simply the narrative thrust has no function for them. I don't know, but it's a really good point. Francis first.
Well, it seems to me that the second half of the play has been mainly about war and combat, and that's a masculine pursuit, particularly at, you know, in the time that we're talking about here.
Sarah?
Well, and there was quite a lot of comment in the first half about the fact that the Lords never actually said anything. So, I mean, I know they were technically on stage, but they might have, I don't know. I mean, maybe Salisbury and Essex and what have you, maybe they were played by different people, or I don't know. I'm just wondering if it would be possible for the barons of part 2 to double with the women in part 1, maybe.
I'm thinking more monks and friars and things.
Oh yeah, of course, the monks and friars.
We've got all those people here. But I mean, there is, you know, the potential of a doubling practice of 2 different actors sharing the same part. It's not completely unknown. I think it's a terrible practice, and I wouldn't want to even contemplate it, but it is possible. It seems to be a thing. Other thoughts? Anything different? And we're all stunned by the death. I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad. Okay, we have one more scene to go, and it is scene 9 of what is called part 2. A parley is sounded. Louis, Pandulph, King Henry, he's king now, the bastard, Salisbury, etc., with the corpse of John. So, Dan, if you were just remain very still, that'd be great. Okay, Pandulph speaks first.
Louis of France, young Henry, England's king, requires to know the reason of the claim that thou canst make to anything of his. King John that did offend is dead and gone. See where his breathless trunk in presence lies, and he, as heir apparent to the crown, is now succeeded in his father's room.
Louis, what law of arms does lead thee thus to keep possession of my lawful right? Answer in fine if thou wilt take a peace, and make surrender of my right again, or try thy title with the dint of sword. I tell thee, Dauphin, Henry fears thee not, for now the barons cleave unto their king, and what thou hast in England they did get.
Henry of England. Now that John is dead, that was the chiefest enemy to France, I may the rather be induced to peace. But Salisbury, and you barons of the realm, this strange revolt agrees not with the oath that you on Bury altar lately swear.
Nor did the oath your highness there did take agree with the honour of the Prince of France.
My lord, what answer make you to the king?
Faith, Philip, this say, it boots not me, nor any prince, nor power of Christendom to seek to win this island Albion, unless he have a party in the realm by treason, for to help him in his wars. The peers which were the party on my side are fled from me. Then boots not me to fight. But on conditions, as mine honour wills, I am contented so depart the realm.
On what conditions will your highness yield?
That shall we think upon by more advice.
Then, kings and princes, let these boys have hand, and at more leisure talk upon the league. Meanwhile to Worcester let us bear the king, and there inter his body as beseems. But first, in sight of Louis, heir of France, lords, take the crown and set it on his head, that by succession is our lawful king.
And they crown young King Henry.
Thus England's peace begins in Henry's reign, and bloody wars are closed with happy league. Let England live but true within itself, and all the world can never wrong her state. Louis, thou shalt be bravely shipped to France, for never Frenchman got of English ground the 20th part that thou hast conquered. Dauphin, thy hand to Worcester we will march. Lords all, lay hands to bear your sovereign with obsequies of honour to his grave. If England's peers and people join in one, not Pope, nor France, nor Spain can do them wrong.
And they exit, presumably taking away the body of King John, unless he jumps up for the curtain call, which would be a bit weird. So thus England's peace begins in Henry's reign, and bloody wars are closed with happy league. And they all lived happily ever after. The end. I like Louis' thing, King Henry. What conditions will your highness yield? Details. I'm going to check the lawyer. Talk to the lawyer just to see what we can get out of this. Don't want to commit myself to anything at this stage. Yeah. Typical politician. I do wonder in practice whether this is actually a separate scene. I'm sure it's possible that it was a separate scene to the previous one, where everybody walking off and walking back on again, but all it seems that you need to do is have Louis turn up there and just negotiate over his recently dead corpse. You could do it, I'm sure, the other way, but I wonder about whether the necessity is your journey really necessary. I wonder. I'd have a song, lay out the king's corpse nicely, enter Louis. That's how I'd do it. How did we feel? About that final scene? Everyone's so emotional. It's a big thing. It's a big thing. Elizabeth, thank you for saving me.
Henry at the end, and we barely meet him. We barely know anything about him, and he gets crowned the king. So it's a bit of an anticlimactic ending because of how long we spent with John and Lois throughout the play.
Well, I just wonder whether there's a thing here with, that thing, thus England's peace begins in Henry's reign. If he is a child, it says young Henry, maybe there's a sense of, yeah, right, it's definitely going to be fine. Definitely going to be fine. There's not going to just be a continuation of this chaos that we've just come out of. I wonder whether that's, I suspect that is a projection, because actually I think Henry III's fine. I think he has a perfectly happy time.
I've heard that his reign was not particularly successful.
Yeah, but in terms of the plays that we get that features him, it's all fine.
Yeah, but if the original audience's awareness of him as kind of a failed king, he wasn't particularly famous. So
that's the thing, is he's a non-entity, really, isn't he? What did Henry III do?
He was Edward I's father. There's his claim to fame.
Exactly, that's it.
How long did he reign?
I genuinely don't know. I suspect.
I was going to say, look it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we should be doing. Someone should be doing that.
I'll do it right now.
Yeah. Sarah.
I think it's quite good that the bastard gets the final speech, because, he's one of the few people who's actually been in it from the very beginning. But also, because I didn't know how the plot was going to hang, when he first turned up and, it was revealed that he was Richard's bastard son, I immediately thought, oh, that's not going to go well, because he's going to have pretensions to the throne, and John's going to get really antsy, and there's going to be like major carnage. And there wasn't. He was just massively loyal all the way through. So then it's kind of fitting that he gets the final say.
Yes, he's a very loyal chap. And yeah, it is fitting, because in a sense it feels like the play, if not pivoting on him, is much more interested in him in various ways. But he's the right. If this crown holds together, it's probably because of him, isn't it? The actions that he does. And I think maybe that feeds into Elizabeth's point about slight anticlimax. Is, if it was the bastard's death, I think we'd feel more in a weird way. I don't know. I see all various hands. Lynn first.
Yes, this is a lot going on in this little scene. Like we've talked about, interest in ending the play with a speech by Philip the Bastard. Really interesting. I know it's a convention later, after the turn of the century, after 1600 at least, that the most high status person on stage usually has the last speech. Henry could just as easily have said this, or a version of this, but the new king doesn't. So that's really interesting that that Philip gets to close out the play. It's also another thing that caught my attention is Lewis's second to last speech. Nor any prince nor power of it boots not me to seek to win this land of Albion unless I've got treasonous parties to help me. I mean, he just goes ahead and said, you guys were willing to commit treason to help me, but now that you are loyal again, I know I can't win. That seems to me a deeply cynical remark. I need my enemies to be treasonous in order to succeed. That's not happening, so I give up. So we still have that kind of cynicism and realpolitik going on, even though the play is trying to militate towards a kind of providential world. So yeah, really weird stuff and interesting going on.
Yeah, it's in a sense, it's saying to the audience, if we are united, we will never be conquered. Rah! Has that sort of quality to it. Francis, I think you've done the necessary detailed research on Wikipedia. How long did he reign?
56 years, according to Wikipedia. If my maths is good enough.
So yeah, that's a long reign.
Yeah,
There were
particularly
not
for
many
the
people who
time.
beat that.
Yeah.
And if it was peaceful, then that suggests he was actually a really good king.
Yeah, it's one of those things about how you define success. I don't think he was militarily very successful, but in terms of the nation as a whole, probably was just sort of pootled along. That's the impression I get from the sources that we are working with, rather than actual history.
Yeah, the standards change. I mean, Edward the First was very much admired in his own time and later eras, and now we kind of look at him as, you know, a warmonger. And wasn't it Edward the First who borrowed a bunch of money from Italian bankers in order to fund his wars, and then defaulted on those loans and basically kind of wrecked the economy of Southern Europe? I think that was Edward the First.
Yeah,
So,
Edward the First borrowed money from an awful lot of people who were then also disenfranchised and chucked out of the country. He was.
oh, that's right. That's right.
So he was ran one of the most successfully anti-Semitic governments that we've known, and was hugely popular for it. It's one of the most depressing elements of English history is that he borrows vast amounts of money from the Jewish population and then expels or murders them. He was a total git. The play we've done on him really does not touch on any of that. I mean, he's really quite ruthless in war and as well with Wales and Scotland and etc. So lauded in his own time for the things that we quite rightly go, no, not great things. Not great things.
Part of the 100 Years' War. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have been content to pootle with Henry, actually. I think pootling at that particular time was probably quite an achievement, like managing to get through a lifespan without major death, disease, or incident.
There isn't a lot of what we could call genuinely stable government in a sense. There's constant rebellions happening all through history. Or at least, maybe it doesn't touch an awful lot of the people on the ground in the same way as other conflicts do. But maybe we're going a bit off topic. Let's stick to King John. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the final speech by the bastard, I've a feeling that he may have ended up as being one of the chief men in the power structure in the early part of Henry's reign. So to a certain extent, this is the gives a job speech. There's also two other historical points in there. I mean, the last couplet, which does seem to effectively be standard issue Elizabethan post-Armada agitprop. And of course, the glossing over of a major bit of English history in the couplet for Never Frenchman got of English ground the 20th part that thou hast conquered. Excuse me, what about William the Bastard who nicked the lot?
Yeah, shush. I mean, the thing about the Bastard, remember, within this fictional universe, absolutely, he is probably angling for power and influence. Of course, he doesn't exist in real terms. He's a bonus ball that has been added to this play that has no real basis. The Richard III did have bastards, and this whole thing is a sort of thing that has sort of been added by other sources and things. So I'm not worried about history because I don't think it matters. We're just telling a good story.
Well, John wasn't actually poisoned, was he? Was he? I thought he wasn't. I thought he died.
He died of dysentery.
Yeah.
He died of dysentery, and I think he did die in an abbey. So people were adding 2 and 2 together and making about 7.5 out of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, he could have been poisoned. I mean, we can't be absolutely certain of that, but that's more a rumour mill mongering after the fact. Yeah. Poisoned by evil monks. It's just that's what just seems to be the thing.
Villain of choice.
So yeah, let's. I think because we've got plenty of time. I deliberately left this last session to be quite open. Many of us have been here, if not for the whole play, but for a reasonable chunk of it. So we've got time to sort of just think about, imagining what we do with this text. And talking about its flaws as well as its up points. That I think Elizabeth talking about an anticlimax was a good point. Dan was talking about, do we stay the course for the length of the whole play? And this is part of a process of working towards fuller productions. And it's always important to remember plural. We can do this, talk about doing this full text, but the road to doing full text is often done through smaller scaling work or scenes or speeches. So it's plus and minuses as we go forward. So think of this as a property you're viewing. You're thinking of buying it. Is it a fixer-upper, or is it just move straight in? What kind of things about the play overall? So pluses, minuses, thoughts about production. And general stuff to throw in here. Elizabeth wants to leap in. Excellent.
Yeah, the first thing I was thinking about when it comes to the play as a whole is pacing, because we have some of those really short scenes, just barely a few lines, and then we also have some long scenes as well. We also have some characters that we don't get introduced to too much later in the play that are really pivotal to the action, to the dramatic action. So my main question would be pacing. How would we keep it engaging and keep it focused, but at the same time doing justice to the text, doing text justice?
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. One of the questions I often ask as a director is, what scenes do you pay for the slow scenes with? Which scenes do you play at pace so that if you do have a long scene, it doesn't feel like an excess because you've just gone from being breathless and you have a little oasis of calm and things. So I think that question of pacing is really important. And that question, I think I'm going to leap on more the question of characters when they appear and when they disappear. In production, are we doing that thing where we see certain characters about a lot more, so that we're either introduced to them early or they don't completely disappear, or there are little mimed sequences where, we might see Queen Eleanor's death because we quite liked Queen Eleanor, and what do we do with battle scenes? So, pacing and characters, I think that there are inconsistencies with those things. Anyone want to leap in, continue with that? Sarah?
I do feel like it's a fixer-upper, but I feel it's one of those fixer-uppers that would just be a bit of a headache, because for me personally, I enjoyed part one far more than part two. And I'd be tempted, in one sense, I'd be tempted to just kind of tack Arthur's death onto the end of part one, call it the tragedy of Arthur.
Yeah, that's nice.
But then my favourite scene in the whole thing is the Monk Thomas scene. So it's like, you couldn't, I wouldn't want to lose that. So then I think, it becomes then about just trimming bits and tightening it here and there. I mean, the thing is, I've enjoyed this play right the way through because I do love a good bit of political intrigue, but Elizabeth is absolutely right. It does end on a bit of an anticlimax. So, and it's partly because John, although he's like the spinning center that everything goes around, he's basically a middle manager who's been promoted over his level of talent. And
so we're seeing an office staging here.
Yes, absolutely. You could do it that way, because he's just he does his best, bless him, but he's just woefully inept. And it's like, I'm not sure how you quite get past that anticlimax at the end because of that. But I'd be really interested to see it staged.
Well, I think there's to go on to the question of pacing and about elements that we enjoyed more or less. I mean, we've always got to be aware that we've looked at over 2 sessions almost as much material as we'd normally look at in one. So if the last 2 days have felt a bit slow, it's because we've actually expanded the time that we're looking at it. And also at the end of the week, we do tend to get a little less enthusiastic for plays. It's a trend. I also want to address the question of part 1 and part 2. I mean, we vaguely talked about it the other day. I don't see any dramatological reason why it's in 2 parts. If it was to be in 2 parts, that's not where the 2-part, the break. I wouldn't even put the interval there between the 2 parts. I think it's a terrible, terrible place to put anything. So I'm now that we got to the end, I'm very much leaning towards that. That's just an entirely artificial division, and actually maybe distorting how we're thinking of this as a play, because we're talking about part 1 and part 2, but it's not really. If I was going to put an interval in, it would be before Arthur's blinding or any of that element comes in, because that's when it starts getting darker. It actually starts before part 2. And you're right, I think it is a game of 2 halves to a degree, but just not on that center and that pivot. It's interesting. I kind of prefer the second half to the first half. So to be contrarian, it's nothing like threatening a small child with blindness and having them fall to their horrible death to just improve the outlook of any play. Lynn,
end with that could be the climax, because I thought that was great. But I'd be tempted to shift the end of part 1 to after his death and just have that as the play.
The problem is then the problem is then it's so massively unbalanced.
Well,
I mean, the second half, might be an hour.
No, but just end it. Actually end play after Arthur's death. Like, just make it a really short play, and just sort of have it, because like all the really interesting intrigue happens in part 1, and then Arthur's actually quite a good character. I mean, the fact that he's like the one with the power theoretically, but has no power in reality, is such an interesting dynamic. And then he ends up like split on the ground. It's like, oh, you actually feel something there. So I'd be tempted to end the play with him dying, but then you would miss all the good stuff in part 2.
Yeah, what would you do? What about you? Would you miss those scheming Frenchmen? And the rebellious nobles and all those the backstabbing.
True.
I think it might be the case this play doesn't have a center of gravity, as it were. So maybe we're because there's an Arthur episode, there's a rebellion episode, there's the stuff in France episode. It's more a 3-act structure than it is a 2-act structure, if it has one. Lynn, I saw a hand earlier.
Yes. So I can see Sarah's point with a little massaging. The first half of this could be the tragedy of Arthur. He's the main character. So, I mean, that's not really out of left field. Like that's in there. But I agree completely with Elizabeth. Also, having been a theater practitioner myself for many years, nothing matters more than pace. I mean, you can get an audience to sit through anything with enough enthusiasm, and if you do it fast enough. So you really got to keep on pace with this. But my thought was that what a producer, director, lead actor needs to think about is John. Because Elizabeth observed in, I think, our first session, the play doesn't feel like it has a center. It doesn't feel like it has a character who's an entry point for us. So John kind of fails to do that, at least on the page in the first half. And then the play works really hard to redeem him and make him this sort of proto-Protestant flawed hero who does sort of realize what a bad king he's been and regret his failures and all of that. So you got to find a way to if you're going to sell John as the main character, if you're going to make John the protagonist and make his story the story of the play, you've got to find a way of selling him to the audience, making the audience care about him, maybe hinting a little that he's redeemable and that he's not just completely incompetent, because yeah, you got to have your audience care about someone, and making him care about John is going to take some work. I mean, I think the middle manager metaphor is perfect. I mean, he's Willy Loman. He's so feckless. Why should I care about that?
I'm wondering if the operative terms in the title is not King John. I mean, everybody calls it Troublesome Reign for Duckman reasons, but you know, it's about the Troublesome Reign.
So,
The of King John feels actually like a slight, you know, it's the chaos of everything, and I wonder if that's actually a route into the text, rather than say let's center it on one character, because the thing about Queensmen plays is they're very ensemble-y. So I'm wondering if that is an element. Dan, any thoughts on that or something else?
Yeah, I really felt I was really enjoying the first half of it because of the ensemble feel of it. I didn't mind all of the different threads going there. But the observation that I still cling to is that for these characters, for this play to be successful, the title character and the central characters essentially really need to be played well and at pace. I'm a huge fan of that because of the fact that because the play goes dark and very serious, and I'm finding it hard not to just want to inject humor into it, where really it would just be my directorial prerogative to do so, but it's not really supported by the text. I'm getting bored in that second half. That's how I feel about it. I purposely had pushed that last speech maybe a little bit too much. You know, I agree that there was definitely enough for King John to be sympathetic in his repentance, but because I felt like it needed some pace to it, like a lot of the other speeches do. If not, this is going to be, yes, maybe nice to read on the page, but not so much fun to watch.
Well, Valentina's, I don't know if that face was indicative of anything. Were you agreeing?
No,
I suspect you were not.
I don't agree. I mean, I only read the first part, so that might be. But I actually quite like King John, and I find him, because he's so inept and like but it feels like he's trying to do his best. I actually quite like seeing a king being so human, to the point where I'm like, I mean, I don't care emotionally for him, but I quite like it. I like watching him. So I think like part of it is like, yes, he needs to be played by a very good actor, but it's not like, it doesn't feel like, I mean, if he's the only character that takes time, I don't mind the rest being pacey, apart from the fact that I think everything should be pacey because it's also political, and it's just like, I don't know, like I don't like plays that lag, so I'm guessing that's it. But yeah, it might be just me, I don't know, but I quite like that character.
Can I just add that I do like King John, actually? So just more of, I can see it being played really boringly.
Well, here's a question. A counterpoint to Valentina's point. You know, what is it that John does that is inept? We talk about him being inept. Does he actually do anything where, you know, that's the wrong choice, my lord, don't do that, terrible things will happen? You know, what is it about John that's giving us that as a thing? Francis?
Well, he gives the order for Arthur to be killed. I find that quite inept.
But he doesn't. But you know, yes, that causes.
And then goes back on it. You know, he doesn't come across as very resolute.
But it's interesting because in the first half, before we get to the Arthur, you know, is he doing anything wrong in his reign, or is it just the reign's going wrong? Lots of hands are flying up. This is great. I love this. Sarah.
He does actually. I mean, he starts off the play pretty well, but then it's like he becomes more ineffectual as it goes on. I mean, yeah, there's the whole thing with Arthur. Oh, let's put his eyes out. Oh no, I wish you hadn't. Oh, you didn't. Oh, that's great. Oh, you know, now he's died and it's all my fault. And then also the whole thing with Peter the Prophet as well. It's like he allows this charlatan. I mean, that's my take on him. Maybe he was a genuine prophet, but like, he allows this guy to basically totally unnerve him. And it's, I'm with Valentina actually. It's like I actually quite enjoy the fact that he's an inept king, and like he's the middle manager who's been promoted over his abilities. But it's like, it is just because it's interesting, because normally the person who is king is the person who really wants to be king. And I don't know, like the longer he goes on, the more you get the impression that he'd rather just be, you know, cozy at home.
Yeah, it's like he's being crushed by being king. He's just being slowly crushed. And, you know, maybe it is the Peter the Prophet principle. You know, it's the Peter principle of being put above your station. It was perhaps very effective as a regent under Richard. But the moment he becomes king, it just doesn't sit right. He doesn't look right. He looks like a middle manager. And that's why everything falls apart. And when you get to the middle of the play, he's overcompensating, going, no, I'll be an evil tyrant. I'll blind Arthur. That's the way to go. Mother's not here to advise me. I'll just do this. It'll be fine. And that's where it all starts increasingly getting wrong. And I almost see him as having a nervous breakdown as he goes. He's just slowly being destroyed by this role, perhaps. I don't know. I'm spitballing. Lynn.
Yeah, so I agree that his big mistake strategically is ordering the mutilation and then assassination of his young nephew. That, if you want to talk about ineffective management technique, that's peak bad management. But even before that, even though it's kind of not his fault, he's king, his claim is contested, and he's trying to sort of bully his way into legitimacy. I'm going to fight a war. I'm going to have a battle with the French. I'm going to meet at this town and you know, pound my chest and rattle my sword. And he just can't quite walk that talk. He can't win a decisive battle. He can't bully down his enemies. He's no Tamburlaine. He's not only no Richard the First. He's no Richard Lionheart. He's no Tamburlaine. He can't just sort of talk his way to victory. So I think even from the beginning, we see that he really can't do it. He's got a claim to the crown, but he doesn't have the kind of strength of character or military skill or just king magic. He doesn't have the fairy dust.
He doesn't have the X factor.
He doesn't have the X factor. Yeah.
I saw various hands earlier. Alan, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one thing at risk of actually trying to ground this back in history is that John inherited a bad hand anyway, because he got effectively the legacy of an expensive foreign war to pay for, which is why he ended up trying to extract money from the only people who'd actually got any, which was the nobility, who predictably took umbrage. The other point is that quite a lot of the character development we see in John reminded me very heavily of one or two of the pieces we've looked at concerning Richard III, as a study in basically a personality dissolving under stress.
Yeah, maybe actually the one of the reasons the play suffers is the forces ranked against John can never quite be explicitly discussed, or don't seem to be, because you don't want to mention Magna Carta. I don't know if it's just that it wasn't as important then, but it seems like the barons had, you know, good legitimate issues with John, and that seems like nobody wants to mention that. And so the barons have a not very good reason for going against John, and all of the discontent. And you don't want to badmouth Richard, and so it feels like maybe that it's just that's where the real history sort of problem comes in, by saying, well, we're not going to mention this. So it slightly takes away motivation that you might be able to throw in and make work. I don't know, again, if that's right or not. I could be really going off on a tangent. Sarah?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, though, because I'm thinking about it. for a modern audience, if you're putting this play on for a modern audience, the ones that know anything about King John, I mean, I learned two things about King John at school: Magna Carta and the fact that he lost the crown jewels in the wash. And neither of those things are actually in the play. Well, I mean, there's maybe a vague hint, but I mean, blinking you'll miss it. So it's like, yeah, actually, you are going to really, I mean, as long as they come to see the play, it doesn't matter, they've already paid for their ticket. But it is, I can see how actually it would really be quite difficult to sell this as a history play to a modern audience, just because of like what is important, well, not necessarily what is important, but what is known about his reign now. Like the popular thing that's known about his reign now wasn't clearly important to Peele or whoever wrote this.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that it does reinforce is the Sellers and Yeatman judgment that John was a bad king.
He's certainly an ineffectual king. It seems to be the conclusion of the room, or at least as far as this play is concerned. We're about to enter extra time, so I think it's time to call last orders. Final thoughts from the room about the play? Anything that you want to say that hasn't been said so far? Francis, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, yeah, I really enjoy the play. I mean, like Sarah, I like a bit of political intrigue. I agree with you, though, Robbie. It lacks the centre of gravity. Like Sarah says, King John's like a middle manager who's been promoted to CEO and isn't up to the job. And I think, yeah, the first half is more interesting than the second. And I agree with Elizabeth that it's the ending's an anticlimax. That's exactly the word that was in my head when we were reading it.
Lynn, final thoughts?
Yeah, not much more than I've said. That, yeah, John's problematic, but I think with the right actor, you might have something here. It's sort of surprising. I you know, as someone with an English degree, I've done a lot of talking about plays on the page, and then when you see them on stage, all of this analysis that you do, you know, it tends to get invalidated. You see someone as ineffective or not the center, but you get a charismatic enough actor, and you undo all of that. So when you actually get a person, a body occupying that role, the experience of it might be really, really different from what the problems that we've been wrestling with here.
I'm very interested to think of, you know, once figuring out a doubling scheme for it and figuring out how it functions as a company interests me. And I think we're right. This is ultimately just a first hunting for problems to a degree, to figure out what we might need to solve, as well as just to enjoy the bits that we have enjoyed. There's lots of bits we have enjoyed. So, you know, we may at this, towards the end, be heading towards the negative, but that's because we are looking for where the bodies are buried so that we can avoid them, as it were, when we build our great monument thing. I'm rambling. Okay, Dan, final thoughts.
Really not much more to add. I want to love this play more than I do. I was really enjoying it the first half, really enjoying the poetry, really enjoying the structure of it. It was much more interestingly written, I thought, in terms of the way that we had the rhyming couplets and the way that we were playing around with the structure, or at least the way the playwright was doing it. And I thought it lent a lot to the tone, the pace, the rhythm of it. The second half was really, it felt just like a bunch of, like a long verse play. Not necessarily, it seemed like it was going to be interesting at times, but then I just felt like when we talk about the ending being an anticlimax, I felt like the entire second half was pretty much an anticlimax. And I think that really can be solved with good central actors. But apart from that, if not, I've seen too many productions where I've just been bored to death because you can't get somebody charismatic in the role of the bastard or the role of King John. There.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find the second half more focused and more. I prefer the second half to the first. I find it interesting. I think that maybe that's just our individual tastes.
I agree, though, that it's more focused in terms of, I mean, you don't have all the threads going, but I thought that that's what it made it more interesting, in fact. The more ensemble feel of it. Now that we've got the central focus of it, it really is incumbent on the on the central players in each of those stories to carry it across the line, I feel. But,
excellent. Elizabeth, final thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Dan just said about the second half of the play and the first half of the play. I think that's the real issue at play here, is that there is the players in these two parts, and where the division has happened is arbitrary. It's not like a specific dramatic action that cuts the play into two. It's just seemed to be turned into two different parts. And I think if we can discover a better place to cut it in half, then we might solve a lot of the issues that we have with the play.
Alan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the script and scrolling back, and I think actually the place to put the break will be at the end of scene 12 of the first part, which is where Hubert's just done the screeching U-turn. That is almost exactly halfway through the text, but it also would leave people going out to an interval being a bit happier, which means they might actually come back after the break.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental problem is with a lot of early modern stuff is that there isn't a good place to put an interval in, where, you know, for a modern audience. I think feels to me more like a three-part structure. So putting an interval in anywhere vaguely in the middle is actually a problem. You either need to put it massively off center, or just run the whole thing all the way through. Yeah. Because audiences don't have back problems or piles. No. Hate it when people do that. But some plays really need it, and maybe this is one of them, where the need of an interval is actually a structural problem that we have. Valentina?
You could put two intervals. Two little breaks.
You don't always get the increased bar sales that you hope you will when you have two intervals.
No, but as opposed to running all the way through.
Yeah, Valentina, final thoughts beyond two intervals?
Beyond that, the only thing I think we didn't notice that the death of John actually does have the potential to be really gruesome, and I think that will like solve a little bit the climax problem, because it's so drawn out, and he loses speech, and then he loses everything else. So.
Oh yeah, we can make that really grim, couldn't we? We like a grim death. Not since the long drawn-out death of Thomas of Woodstock have we enjoyed a death, the potential of a death more. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Valentina is completely right. You could have like foaming at the mouth, and that totally undercuts the point I was just going to make, actually, because I agree with Lynn. It's like it comes down to the production and the actors. It could be absolutely mesmerising, this play, and I'd love to see it. Just I think it would be a really rewarding one to work on and to see. I was going to say, actually, I think the scope for making it quite a good audio play, apart from the scene with the monks and the nun in the chest, because that's just comedy gold and you'd want to see that on stage. But like most of it, I would say would make a really good audio play. But then also John's death scene, yeah, you could make that fantastic, actually. So probably not a good audio play. It's probably just complete bollocks.
It's interesting what works and what doesn't work as an audio play for these kind of things. You'd think long speeches and work really well as audio, but oddly enough, action works surprisingly well instead, because, you know, battle scenes are great on audio, but long speeches for some reason lose their impact. Has been one of the big problems we've had with the full cast audio stuff. I actually think that the chess sequence could still work in audio, actually, in a weird way.
Yeah, it could.
And we can have a great death rattle stuff from John. Close-up mic, rattling noises. You can have hours of fun with that. Though, of course, doing that safely in the world of COVID-19 is much harder. Decontamination of the studio would just be excessive. Anyway, Eric, you are, I think, last in the sequence. Any final thoughts?
Well, I think, I kind of disagree with the fact that, like, the second half is less interesting, because it kind of basically you've got, well, I mean, not because of the deaths so much, but because of the arc of John. He just kind of disintegrates completely. He kind of unravels so quickly after Arthur's death and so on. Also, when Alan mentions that, like, the sort of descent into madness kind of stuff, it made me think weirdly of Sarah Kane for some reason, which is not exactly like, it's the other end of, you know, modern dark, and I don't know, it just kind of stuck in my head for some reason. But I think it does depend on the actors a lot. If you get like actors going sort of prancing around, sort of, you know, not really taking it very seriously, then it can end up being very, very boring.
Yeah, there's all sorts of tonal questions that being able to look at this in maybe, you know, a more condensed fashion over a shorter period of time, where we just go for the text to see how it flows, perhaps is perhaps the next stage for this, rather than looking at individual bits in detail. Actually, maybe what we need to do is get a sense of the flow of the whole thing in a, you know, terrifying ordeal of pain, of pace and things, and seeing how it goes. We've had some troublesome thoughts about this particular reign. There is no consensus. There's no consensus in the world of John, and there's no consensus about the play about John. There are lots of overlapping thoughts, but I don't think anyone's exactly on the same page as anyone else, and that's fine. This is the end of The Troublesome Reign of King John. It is also the end of the reasonably attributable plays to George Peele. We have now done all the Peels. There may be some more plays that have been attributed to Peele, but they're really tenuous from now on. You know, we've really now we've done the lot. And it is almost the end of our journey through the Queen's Men play as well. There's one more that's fairly firm and one more that's very questionable, and I think then that's our lot for them as well. So it's almost, very nearly, the end of an era, but not quite. All that remains is to thank Helen Good for helping prepare the text, and all the readers in the room for their work this week. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.